I'm about to interview the daughter of the man who married my ex-wife. And no punches are going to be pulled. Welcome to a special edition of Ask Andy Anything and the Divorce Dad series. What's really exciting about this and proof of concept, today is my former spouse's 9-year anniversary with her husband. So I actually have the daughter of my former spouse's husband on the video cast. So please welcome McKenna. McKenna, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. So let's just start off. What are your thoughts on your father being remarried and that it's been 9 years?
I don't know. I think initially I wasn't fond of my dad getting remarried because I was young. I had like my own opinions about it, but I would not want it any other way. I love the family that I have, the people that I've met, and like my relationship with my stepmom is amazing. So thank you for passing her along.
Did you always have an amazing relationship with your stepmom?
No, not at all.
Tell me about what it took for you to get to where you are today. What were the things you, as a child of divorce, had to go through in order to be in a place of acceptance and actually enjoyment?
I think it was just working through like my own roadblocks because I needed therapy, whether that be because my parents were divorced or other things that were going on in my household. And it took me going to therapy and realizing like, oh, my stepmom isn't a threat and I can like care about my stepmom and have a relationship with her without lessening the value of my relationship with my own mom. And I think also getting out of the mindset of like she's stepping in and taking my dad's attention away from me and she has her own kids and now my dad's taking care of them and just like it made my life more plentiful, but I had to change my mindset to see it that way because at first I kind of was like this is taking away from my own life and my own needs, but that wasn't what was actually going on.
Had you not gone to therapy, would you be in the place where you are today?
Um, no. I think some things about my life would be the same.
What did you get from the therapist that changed your ideas from where they were initially?
I think it was just looking like at myself. Like, why do I feel that way? Like, is there things that have happened when I was younger that caused that reaction out of me? Or like, is what I'm seeing because I just had a very negative mindset in all aspects of my life. I've grown as a person in a positive way because of therapy. I think my relationship with Julie would have amounted to something because she really just wanted to get me into the family dynamic and include me. But I think if I hadn't gone to therapy, I would still be resistant to that. And there are still things that come up. Like we got in a huge argument because my her son and I got in a lot of trouble. And I was like, no one wants me to be part of this family. I'm being kicked out of the dynamic. And like, do you guys even want me here? And it brought up a lot for me. But at the end of the day, like I just realized Julie cares about me. I care about her. And we're gonna butt heads sometimes. Like just because she's my stepmom doesn't mean that like everything's gonna be good and great. And like I don't know. There's so many dynamics that play into that.
So I understand that your mother remarried fairly early after your parents got divorced. Well, what's your relationship like with your stepdad, and compare that to your relationship with Julie?
My stepdad and I were really close when my mom first got remarried. I think it's because I felt like my dad was a little bit absent in my life. So my stepdad was really good about coming in and taking over that for me and giving me a father figure when I needed it. Because, you know, like my dad was in a lot of pain after the divorce and he just wasn't as present as he not should have been or could have been or really anything. Like it's just it played out the way it played out. But over time, I don't think my stepdad knew how to grow with me as a person because he came into my life when I was 7 or 8 and I was this young kid And as I started getting closer to my dad or growing up and like drifting in my own direction, he didn't really know how to handle that. And he almost was like, you owe it to me to be this way with me because I like invested so much time in you and I was this father figure for you. And I was like, okay, but like I also have my dad who wants to come back into my life and is willing to be more present. So we drifted apart drastically. And things have happened in recent months actually that have led us to kind of be in better contact. Um, but my dynamic with my stepmom is completely different. Like I wouldn't say she's like she never took that's not true. She's definitely a mother figure, but she didn't impose that on me or herself. It wasn't like, "I'm coming in. I'm your mother figure. This is what I'm giving you, and this is what you owe me." It was like, "Oh, here's this dynamic. You're my husband's daughter, and I wanna include you in the family." She has always referred to me as one of her kids. She's defended me, but it's not I don't feel like I owe anything to her. So I feel like we have a much more positive dynamic and I can come to her, I can tell her anything. And it's like, I think with my stepdad, if I tell him something, he's like, well, tell your mom. Or like, I'm going to tell your mom that because she needs to know. But with Julie, we have our own dynamic separate from her marriage with my dad. So we're able to build our own relationship outside of their marriage.
Let me ask you this. So this is really for divorced fathers and how they can have an amicable relationship with their former spouse, for the benefit of the children, like yourself. And so this is really about advice that you could give to these fathers on how not to lose their kids. And one of the things you mentioned was that your biological father was distant or seemed like in a lot of pain. He wasn't there early on. How old were you? Did you say you were 7 when your parents got divorced?
Yeah, I was like 7, but things have been really on the rocks before then. I don't even remember my parents ever being in a happy marriage, and my dad was working all the time.
One of the things that it sounds like that made you feel a distance between your biological father and yourself was that he worked so much. Is that accurate?
I think him working so much and also just like I mean, he was prioritizing things after the divorce for his own well-being because I think that my dad deep down knew I'm not going to be a good dad and I'm not going to be present for my kids unless I can have this time for myself to kind of redevelop who I am as an individual, right? Because he had been married to my mom for so many years. So he was developing himself as an individual. Uh, so it wasn't that he was working so much because parents have to work. That's just what it is. My dad had a family to support and childcare to now provide for an ex-wife or child support. But it was the fact that during the time I was supposed to be with him, he couldn't prioritize me. So I was being left with babysitters or like he was going out on dates and his friends were watching. So I felt, and even if this wasn't the reality, I just felt that I was being passed off when I should have been spending time with my dad because he already didn't have a lot of time allotted to him after the initial divorce. So I just felt like I was put on this back burner, and my dad tried his best, but I, as a kid, didn't feel that way. And my mom didn't really say things that would help me. Like, she wasn't like, oh, your dad's trying his best, your dad's this. She's like, your dad's not there for you. And so it was just a very unhealthy dynamic from both ends.
So a lot of things I hear about, the men in these different divorced men's group is that their former spouses are being like how you mentioned about your mother was saying, well, your dad's just not there, kind of putting negative things into the children's heads. And well, in a situation where you have that, where you have a father that wants to make it work, but a mother that doesn't in divorce, I'm talking about. What advice do you have for fathers that do not have an amicable relationship? What can they do to either try to make it amicable or make it easier for the child? The child, that's most important, how they can make it the easiest for the child. What would your advice be?
So my parents did not have they still don't have a good relationship whatsoever. I think that it takes two to tango. Like if your ex-wife is not gonna be open to having a relationship that would be healthy and beneficial for your child, because sometimes people just can't see outside of themselves, then there's nothing you can really do. But to make it better for the child, if the kid is coming over and you know that your ex-wife is talking poorly about you to your child, don't like push back on that in ways that's like your mom's stupid, your mom's crazy, your mom doesn't know what she's talking about, because then the kid gets put in this like whirlwind where it's like, oh my god, like both my parents are bad, but like then it turns into the kid like siding with one parent, or like it never goes well. So I think it's just about biting your tongue and saying, okay, like my ex-wife is saying these things about me. There's nothing I can do. I think it's good to go from the angle of like, I'm like, if you're like to your kids, if your kids are like, well, mom said this, mom said that, just be like, yeah, like mom has her own opinion and like mom is really hurting right now. Like we're trying to figure out how to make this work, and not give them too much information, but just like everybody's human. Like I think that in divorce, people are so like, oh, the other parent is the enemy. And maybe they are, maybe they're not. There's so many sides to so many situations. But like it's all for the kid. Like there's so many more things that I've had issues with later on in my life and in the early stages of my life that could have been so preventable if my parents just at least didn't talk poorly about each other or do certain things that they did, and it became super negative for me.
That's one of the things that I talk about to the fathers, because my focus is on what the fathers can do, not so much what the mothers. Because moms, um, have so much support. Women in general have so much support because it's more acceptable to be open with your feelings and emotional and things like that. And so, one of the reasons I started this series is that I just wasn't finding anything for men by men. And to be fair, um, my traffic isn't that great on YouTube because men aren't really searching out how can I have an amicable relationship with my former spouse. But I see it as something that's in the future, that I'm ahead, and it's going to catch up as vibrations raise. That's what's going to happen. But one of the things that I say to men, and a lot of times, speaking, a man's language is a little bit more direct. And I say, you got to put your ego in your back pocket. You got to suck it up, like you were saying. You may never get the support of your former spouse, your ex-wife, your ex, whatever you want to call it. If your focus is on making your children, they're hurt, they're going to hurt regardless, but make their hurt as less as possible. Then if one party's not coming to the plate, then that's going to be on you. So you just suck it up and you just don't say anything negative. And the thing about it is, and this is something I talk about, is that children vibrate at a deeper level. There's things that they know stuff, they can't put into words, they don't realize it, but they'll feel funny. Like if one side is blasting the other side, that's going to make them feel weird, but it's going to make them feel weird about the person that's saying the negative stuff. If the other side isn't, the other side's just like, taking it, then it's the feeling's going to end up turning on the person who's being the negative person.
Make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you will be notified as soon as episode 2 of this series drops.